Well, welcome back. It's 1 o'clock. Why don't we get started? So this is Art Viewing Adventures. I'm Rodney Paul. I am joined by Josué Rojas. Josué, how are you today?
I'm blessed. Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to ask Nikki, our community living campaign connector, to tell us about CLC and kind of everything that's going on. So take it
Oh,
away, Nikki.
okay, thank you. Hi, Joshua, Rodney, and Jennifer. Glad we're all here together again. And I can't tell how many people are on this call, but I have a feeling it's going to be a lot.
I'm
Uh,
here, Nikki.
Hi, Paco. Of course, Paco. Hola, Paquito. So we're the Community Living Campaign. We're a nonprofit in San Francisco, and we are dedicated to helping and advocating for seniors and adults with disabilities in San Francisco. We have daily events online and in person, including exercise, art, a lot of tech support, things like that. So I'll put our link in the chat so you can check us out. And I'm anxious for this program because my son AJ Tresvina was a muralist with Fresita Eyes from when he was a child in 2000 all the way until he reached the age of 21. And unfortunately, AJ passed away in 2009, but he was here to be part of this book. And they had a grand opening at the De Young, and he made sure that I went with him. And so proud of him. We walked in together, and people were saying hi to him because he was known in the community. So this is street art San Francisco, and it's full of a bazillion murals all over San Francisco. So I wanted to share that with you. And then he gave me this, either he made it or a friend of his made it, which is totally appropriate for Valentine's Day. So I'm going to tape it behind you so you can be so he can be with us. Yeah. So take it away, Rodney and Joshua. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. So Hostaway is returning to Art Viewing Adventures. He was with us in October for our celebration of mural art in conjunction with Latino Heritage Month. But Hostaway, you're back because we wanted to continue talking about murals, and particularly with the Pan American Unity mural leaving the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, which is sad, but we learned a lot from seeing that mural on display for, what was it, almost 4 years. So Josue, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm blessed and I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for joining and thank you for the invitation once again, Rodney.
Well, yeah, we really appreciate you making time because you've got a lot to keep you busy. Um, but let's start talking about Pan American Unity. We've done some shows on this, but to me, I thought this was really one of the best things I've ever seen displayed in San Francisco. But Josue, like to you as a muralist, what are some of your takeaways from having this mural on display for all this time at SFMOMA?
Well, firstly, once again, thank you and thank you to everybody kind of tuning in. Anything that I have to say, I just want to kind of preface it that I'm not really a historian. I have taught Latino and California art history, but I'm not myself a historian. So take it with a grain of salt that what I'm going to share is a little bit of an artist's take. And that being said, this piece is one of the greatest statements, I think, by any artist that we've had within the Latino expression. That really kind of tries to marry the North and South hemispheres in the Americas. I think he really, Diego really kind of was very meticulous in trying to speak about the past, speak about modernity, speak about his love for industrialization and his admiration and love for the ancient. And I think it's all it's kind of like a pretty much a tour de force of what he can kind of do. I mean, you're definitely getting some. It harkens back to some of the indigenous paintings that he was really inspired by, like Bonampak, for example. And he also there's some moments here that really rhyme with the Detroit murals that he did, right? Some of the machinery and stuff. So I think he's really we're seeing a lot here for a relatively small piece. And I know if you're like small, that's one of the biggest things I've ever seen in my life. And I think for Diego, this is about medium sized to small. He's got a lot of really enormous work. And so He packs a lot in a little bit of space.
Yeah, you mentioned the Detroit mural at the Detroit Institute of Arts, and I'm kind of plotting a chance hopefully to see that a little later on this year. But you know, all these murals that he did, he's got these people that are based on real people that were in San Francisco in 1940 when this was done. This I know, like this guy here is Timothy Pfluger, who was the architect at City College and also the architect of the Pacific Telephone and Telegraph building, which is right behind SFMOMA. I'm curious, Josue, are there other people that you're aware of in the mural that you always kind of take note of when you look at it?
I do. Well, I mean, just even to firstly, I mean, just to say, sort of cite them back generally, he is the master of putting together Easter eggs. There's so many Easter eggs and little things. You could spend hours really looking at this. But particularly right in that centerpiece, I mean, everybody's in there from some of his lovers to Diego Rivera, I'm sorry, to Frida Kahlo. But I see here he's got yeah, Timothy Pfluger, his friend and patron, so who and one of his collaborators who kind of put him up to this. And I think I think as with any artist, the work can kind of be a snapshot of that moment in time, right? And so he's putting some of his influences here. I mean, it's really kind of powerful too, his relationship to, what was happening in current events, right? From fashion to architecture to, the diver and the that athleticism, and then of course the World War II stuff where Hitler makes an appearance both as himself and as Charlie Chaplin, which I think is kind of art, bringing forth new art and inspiring art, but also just kind of speaking to that. So I think if you spend enough time with this, you will find some serious Easter eggs that are on there.
So
I think
any other thoughts about the Pan American Unity mural before we move on and start showing? I mean, our goal with this show is to really talk about all the things that you can see now in San Francisco, now that this thing is going back into storage for, we think, unfortunately, a bunch of years.
I'm not sure when this. I mean, what I do want to say one quick thing is that it was on display, and I saw it for the first time as a young art student at City College. And so I'm hoping I couldn't tell you exactly when that's going to be available again, but I'm really hoping that it will be available soon at City College.
But my understanding
Once
on
again,
that is it is supposed to be going back up at City College. They're working on a new, I think it's a theater building where it will be, but they do not know when that building will be completed. And it had originally been, it was going to be in just like a few years, but unfortunately, it might be longer than that.
no, yeah. Well, the one thing I will say about this is I think if you go to the centerpiece, the Coatlicue is really a very important figure. And by Coatlicue, that's about a couple iterations removed from the Virgin Mary. So it's like the Virgin Mary was based off Tonantzin, a goddess, um, and then Tonantzin, a previous iteration of that is Coatlicue, and that's what you see on sort of the left side with the turquoise calluses, the hand, and the teat there, the kind of motherly teat, the goddess who makes kind of an appearance in many different ways throughout the Chicano mural experience. And so I just wanted to sort of point that out, just because it's kind of like a precursor in a film that you're gonna see more of this figure in one way or another as we move forward.
So that's good to know. Like you see different things in this than maybe the more casual observer, because this does tie in with your culture and really, I would say in a very important part of San Francisco culture.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So we're going to move on then, and we'll start talking about some murals in the Mission District. And I suppose everybody on this call knows where the Mission District is, but we're going to post this as a video on YouTube. So maybe there'll be folks from out of town. And I think if you were visiting San Francisco, you could really do a lot worse than picking a day to hang out in the Mission District and see some of these murals that we're going to be talking about.
I agree. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you could get some really yummy food while you're at it.
Yeah, great food. The Mexicatessen is one of my favorite spots. Just so much there. Um, we're going to start with Balmy Alley, which is a short little street between 24th and 25th Street and between Harrison and Treat in the Mission. And it just it's just chock full of these murals. And Josué, like, do you go to Balmy Alley often?
Yeah, I was actually just there over the weekend. There was a festival that is 4 years strong. It's one of the newer festivals. It's called Lover's Lane, and it's put together by one of the younger generation, sort of this one young artist that has taken on the mantle. Her name is Lucia Ippolito. And so she leads Lover's Lane. And so it's a Valentine's Day festival. And it's a lot of fun. And so I saw Nikki there actually in person, got to see Nikki out there. It was really, really special. Anyway, so to speak about Balmy, I think, back to your point, Rodney, that, in the Mission, there's several different alleys that are covered in murals. And the Mission District is San Francisco's prime space for murals. I think it's been categorized as the largest um, outdoor art gallery in the world. So I think per mural, per square mile, it has more murals than anywhere else. And so you get it's a really strong and powerful attraction. Most of the traditional murals were of the Chicano tradition, the Mexican American tradition. But now it's newer alleys like Clarion Alley, like Lucky Alley, Cypress Alley. There are newer works there that are, a lot of them are spray paint and newer techniques and newer sort of themes. Well, Balmy Alley really represents the kind of historical, really sort of mission Chicano style. And I won't speak on this too much at length, but a group called Placa in the 80s, really early 80s, really got together to try to comment on what was happening in Central America at the time. And so the Placa muralists really showed solidarity and organized one big sort of mural painting experience there. And I think it's really important to note that, because that's what makes San Francisco really unique, is that it's the Latino experience isn't a monolith. It isn't solely Mexican American. I mean, it's deeply indebted and strong and owes a lot to the Mexican American experience, but it has equal influences with South America, Central America, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras. And so we see that diverse, nuanced experience within the arts. And we certainly see that in Balmy Alley, because it really was a very strong expression of Central American solidarity. And this is a really key piece that you're showing here, the Irene Perez piece, because it's the oldest surviving Balmy Alley mural. And so I did speak about the Placa murals and the Central American murals, but before that iteration, in the 70s, a group called Mujeres Muralistas, which is credited for being one of the first sort of mural collectives. Women, I can't speak on it deeply at length. We could definitely look up some more, but women's contributions, both through Priscilla Eyes and Susan Cervantes, Juana Alicia, now in these days, into the younger people that are continuing to make art, but with the setting of sort of the sword in the ground. And it was always women that were really holding it down and being very powerful. One of them, the main group being Mujeres Muralistas, and so Irene Perez, one of them. So this is the oldest surviving original Balmy Alley mural, and it's 500 years of indigenous survival, of indigenous resistance. And
That's nice that the oldest surviving mural is about survival.
that's right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
that's great. I really appreciate what you're saying about, understanding the diversity within the Latino community. For Europeans, we always, of course, have this distinction between like English, French, German, and sometimes we lose that appreciation for the distinction in other places like Asia or Central and South America. So it is important to understand that, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. It's really, really powerful. Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
I think
so I think one of the things that I'll talk about too. I mean, we're talking a little bit about I always like to talk about the why of making art, right? This is in solidarity in Central America. This is a really powerful expression of politics or identity, but in many other ways, the how to make artwork is a real key. I mean, if you leave it here for a sec, looking at this one here by Martin Travers and his team, you see the deterioration, right? You see some of the this is a fence. It's a very much a alley, and it's very much a fence in the alley. And the physicality of, using latex paint, in our case, it's latex paint, um, and putting that on a primed fence, which is really just a piece of wood. And, that is receiving sunlight, it's receiving rain, it's receiving wind, it's receiving all of the outdoor elements. And so, they're subject to fading, warping, just regular wear and tear, in some cases abuse and graffiti. And so um, there is some work in the how to maintain, how to restore, how to upkeep, how to keep these murals beautiful and bright. And so we owe a little bit there. And I'll backtrack here a little bit. We owe a little bit there to our mural sort of ancestors, our mural sort of influencers, which are so Diego Rivera. I don't know if you all know this, but he was just one of the three greats, right? So there's several other amazing muralists, but there's a tradition where the Mexican muralists will call these three artists the three greats. So it's Diego Rivera, um, Jose Clemente Orozco, and David Siqueiros. And they all really sort of had a foray where they kind of came in different moments to visit the United States, and they influenced different areas of the Latino and Chicano experience. And so I think it's important just to comment, we've got Balmy Alley and we have this Diego Rivera mural, the Pan American Unity, but they've got the Plaza Olvera, Olvera Street in Los Angeles has an original David Siqueiros, right? The Tropicalismo, the American Tropical is what it's called. And that's a fun sort of one to look up. And Orozco, Jose Clemente Orozco at the Pomona Cal Poly has a Prometheus mural. And all of those are done in the old school kind of fresco. Even Diego Rivera's is done in the old school fresco. And I'm gonna bring it right back to the technicality of the murals here. It was Siqueiros who gave us our modern formula. He was experimenting with different paints, and he gave us a lot of our modern formula that we use for our polymer and acrylic murals. And so nowadays, most brush murals, I'm going to say, are done with the polymer acrylic that's like heavily pigmented to keep away fading and to resist some of the wear and tear. A lot of them are done with spray paint these days, but that's not what we're looking at right now. And so I think it's important to talk about the technicality of how these things get completed and how that relates to some of our mural forerunners.
Yeah, I think like the conservation is really important. And that was one of the things about Pan American Unity was in conjunction with it being shown at SFMOMA, they did this incredible restoration job.
Right.
It's not outdoors though, the way these other ones are. So, I guess are there like efforts to maintain these things, or do you need to like raise money to?
All the time, all the time. I mean, with stuff like, I think it's really interesting, right? If you get like a museum commission or you get some sort of other commission, it's like those things are paid for all up front. Something like Balmy Alley, even though it's historical and it's epic and it's seen by thousands of visitors that come from all over the world. Every year thousands of people come to Balmy. Generally no one really gets paid to do Balmy Alley, or any of these public murals. They're sort of more of a public service or a public trust. And so um, I have one mural that's on this alley, and it's up for restoration. It was completed in 2014, and I'm going to have to do a little bit of crowdsourcing. I think because I want to do it right, and I really want to take the time to do it, so I'm going to have to pay myself. And I think the other one I'm gonna really want to do is pay some of my assistants And the other one is I don't want to really spare any expense at making sure that I get the best stuff. And so I think because it is important, I want to give people the ability to participate in supporting this one. So I will be putting up something later this year. I'm aiming for the summer to again restore the mural that I have there.
Well, Josue, when you do that, please send me that information and I will, many of you know I send out an email every Friday. I will definitely put this in my email and give others the opportunity to be part of that. I'd be honored to be part of that. So yeah, we definitely need to protect these murals. They're super important to just San Francisco heritage.
And after 10 years, is this a case where you have to move from latex to polymer, or what needs to be done on your work in Balmy Alley?
No, I'm gonna stay with the same formula. I think what I'm going to need to do is I've done like a preliminary assessment, but I have to go in there and kind of sand it down, clean it up, restore. I think it's a lot of it's fading, you know, so it's about brightening it up. There hasn't I wish I could say that it has been completely respected from graffiti, but there hasn't been too much of that. But they got hit at least 3 times. So
Wow.
you know, making sure I undo some of that. A lot of it for me, it's going to be technically like layering and layering color in there sort of slowly.
Yeah,
as
we
they're
had a question.
restored.
Thank you.
We had a question in chat about whether the murals are protected. You know, I mean, what can you do, right? They're out there. Hopefully, the graffiti people respect them, but you know, it only takes one or two bad apples to really
Mhm.
cause damage, right?
You know, there for a long time has been this kind of code that people respect and love murals, particularly in the Mission, right? I think since COVID though, there's been just like a little bit of a spirit of like it just seems a little bit more lawless, and so folks have been writing on murals. There was a couple different moments where stuff in bombing gets hit, and I think it's just a moment of staying on top of it. It really is like you know, it's like any other maintenance. You have to just go in there and sort of upkeep it. And I think as long as the graffiti folks see that you're on top of it, that's one of the greatest deterrents, right? They say, okay, I hit this last week, I came back and it's gone already. So I think that kind of thing really lets people know that, you know, we want these murals to survive and we will. Because the other thing too is if you don't do that, they get hit again. And the last thing I'll say is they do Presida Eyes, which I haven't really got to speak about Presida Eyes very much, but Presida Eyes has really helped murals for the murals and the culture of making murals flourish in the Mission District by you know, having tours, training people, selling the stuff that you need to make a mural, advocating for murals, and in some cases protecting them. You know, keeping people from tearing them down, keeping corporations from, if they buy a building, from deleting murals, suing and going after the people that do. So there's a lot of really powerful ways to advocate for murals and stuff. And so I want to give a big shout out to Presida Eyes. Where was I going with that?
Yeah, we're just talking about protecting them and
Oh yeah, protected. Oh, they sell a sheer coat. It's called the sheer coat. So it's protected from UV and from graffiti. And it's just like a two-part epoxy formula that really sort of protects it. Um,
How long has that existed for?
I don't know the history of that particular people are, you know, when they talk shop, there's always all this different ways of dealing with the protection. But I think at the very least, I've been aware of it for at least the last maybe 15 years. 15 years. It's just called Sheer Coat. It's on Presida's website.
You know, I ask because I'm really interested in preserving the mural at 24th and Harrison, the one that's on the side of the little meat market on Harrison itself. It's the Mexican Romeo and Juliet. You
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah.
that
I
one,
think that would be really great. It would be really key. That one gets done all the time. You
Yeah.
know, so that one would be key. It might even be up for restoration again. You
I
know,
hope so. I'm very interested in that. I wanted to get back to Suzanne about it again.
is that one of the ones that your son participated in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense.
I went
That
up
makes a lot of
in
sense.
2000. Mm-hmm. So it
Yeah,
needs work.
yeah, it'd be fun. It'd be a fun thing to kind of bring up. I'd love to support if we want to sort of bring that up to them and see if they can get a team and keep that one
Let's work
bright.
on that. Let's work on that.
Yeah.
I think there was a question about whether property owners could, like, can they get rid of the murals if they so choose? And, or is there?
So I think I like to think of it, sorry to kind of cut you off there, Rodney. I like
Go
to
ahead.
think of it as each mural is really like a person. It has a different sort of origin story and a different way of coming to be. There's no one way for it to come about. But let's just say this one, if you go back for that for a second, Rodney, let's say someone bought this building and they say, well, I don't like this mural. So I think there's the idea that the mural is on the building and that you own the building, but then you don't own the way the community interacts with this space culturally. And I think that's an argument there that could be made legally. I mean, there's one right now that I brought up, Mike Rios, who we'll see some of his work later, but please don't turn the page quite yet. He had a one on 20th and Folsom at El Faro, and it just got painted over. Someone must have just bought the building and painted it completely gray. It's one of my all-time favorites. I even did a tribute to it. I'm so sad about it. I think that one's ready for at least some litigation, right? They painted over it. Well, we're gonna have to maybe pay for that a little bit because that didn't belong to the, it's not the property owners. It belongs to the community. The one thing I will say about this one really, this Indigenous Eyes War piece by Susan Cervantes, really, and you can look into this one because this is like a homework one. It relates to war. It relates to war being experienced through the eyes of a child. And myself and my heritage as a Central American, as a Salvadoran American, who my migration story is deeply affected by the wars of Central America. And I did come as a child. This piece really speaks to me. And I think this is one of the things that really, one of the pieces where I saw, it's basically a close-up. I don't know if you can see that there's like a little girl there in like a violet dress. And there's a shadow of a soldier just off camera. And it really speaks to the war being experienced by children. And so, and inside of the eyes, I don't know if you all could see, there's on the right eye, there's a pretty clear white dove. On the left, it's less clear, but there's a soldier with a skull. There's a skull, a soldier, and the face is a skull, soldier's helmet and stuff. And so that's a dichotomy, right? War or peace. It's just the lyricism in this, the beauty, it's political, of course. It pulls at our heartstrings. It gives us sympathy and love for young people that are suffering. But at the same time, aesthetically, it's gorgeous. Technically, it's beautiful. It's just kind of like it's almost like a beautiful song, a beautiful melody with amazing lyrics that kind of move you, right? It's like that holy grail that artists are looking for. And I think that's part of the identity of San Francisco murals, is that we've got some really lyrical murals that don't slack or lack in the politics. And so that's the one comment I wanted to give about that piece. And also, once I saw that and understood it, it made me want to paint murals.
So this is a very important piece for you, and especially because it relates to your personal story. And what I love about art is that it communicates things in a just much deeper way than mere words. You're talking about, like, if you want to make a statement against war, you could write something, explaining your view. But to do, a picture like this can really drive it home. And
That's right.
that's one of the reasons why art is so important.
Correct.
So we are looking at all these murals on Balmy Alley, and of course it's like visiting a museum. And you mentioned Clarion Alley. What was the other alley?
There's Lucky Alley. There is Osage Alley. There's Cypress Alley. There's Lucky Alley. Did I say Lucky Alley?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like
There's an exhibit now up at Minnesota Street Projects that is a Clarion Alley mural projects. Some of their outlier artists are displaying some of their work there now. Oh, and since we're talking about the subject, other cities have definitely got these spaces that are mural environments, right? If you have not, you definitely need to go and see San Diego's Chicano Park, right? And we're lucky that one of our big artists, one of our big Shiros, um, was originally a San Diego, a Chicano Park artist, Yolanda Lopez, who was a personal friend and mentor. I still consider her that, but she's no longer with us. She was a participant in the Chicano Park murals, and then moved up to San Francisco and helped really establish spaces like Galeria de la Raza and other spaces, and is an amazing artist in her own right. But so there's Chicano Park in San Diego. There's the LA River in Los Angeles. There's all the alleys in San Francisco that we've talked about. There was Five Points in New York, and there's the newer sort of Wynwood Walls in Miami. Cities understand, and cities are trying to have this kind of thing where it's like if you have a destination, right? Where all the murals are, people will come and will enjoy these works of art. And so I think it's always a win-win, you know. Then of course there's gentrification, but that's a whole other can of worms. It's very complex.
Well, one of the things about art is, we've got these museums that are charging now like $35 for admission, and the murals are out there. It's like a museum that does not charge admission.
Right. Yeah.
And we probably need to get like some San Francisco City Guides has really good tours that go visit some of these murals. They've got a mission murals tour that I highly recommend. I've really enjoyed it. And I think, Josué, do you know of other tours of the murals in the Mission District?
The one that I sort of would sign off on that really knows their stuff is Precita Eyes itself. I would go through Precita Eyes. Patricia Rose leads their tour program, and she just knows more than anyone that I know of in murals. What's that?
Maybe that was just someone who was unmuted.
Hmm.
But that's great. I definitely won't. I have to do the Precita Eyes mural sometime. Why don't we move on and talk about another great place in the Mission District, the Women's Building at 18th and LaPage Streets. I'm saying that right. Am I saying the name of that street right?
I always said Lapage, but Lapage,
Lapage?
yeah, who knows, right? Yeah,
Thanks
Lapage,
for
Lapage.
so here is where it is on the map. I'm always trying to show these things in conjunction to BART station. So it's just a little bit to the west of 16th, and it'd be a couple blocks from 16th Street, Mission, BART station, the Women's Building right here. And Josue, what do you know about these murals that are on the building?
So the mural is called The Masterpiece, and it was completed in 1994 by some pretty legendary women. Actually, no, it wasn't really touched by male artists. It was all women. And you can see the names here, but Juana Alicia Miranda Bergman, Edith Boone, Susan Cervantes, Mira Desai, Yvonne Littleton, and Irene Perez, who we see was one of the original Mujeres Muralistas. And these really it is kind of like the Justice League of women muralists in the Mission and in the Bay Area. And there we see I don't know for extra points, because anybody recognize who the central figure is?
Rigoberta.
Yeah, it's Rigoberta Menchú, who's a Nobel Peace Prize winner. And she had just won that right around when this mural was completed. And so there's a photo of her standing on the roof across the alley from this. And so I'm sure she was really honored to have that. But this is a really, really special piece that is amazingly designed. It has, goddesses of water and earth. It has women from different corners of the world on different corners of the mural, right? We have Asian representation and Celtic and indigenous, and this is in one sense a lot like the Pan American Unity, in that you can really spend a long time. There's Easter eggs galore, right? And where Diego really spent time with like actual figures, and there are actual figures and portraits of people here. This tapestry is really kind of one of the recurring themes of this mural, right? This like multicolored tapestry from all over the world, right? And so it's completely empowering. I mean, I'm just here stating the obvious, right? Looking at what I see, I think anybody who sees this, but particularly women will feel completely empowered. I mean, just even as a feat of human accomplishment, but just to know that this was completely for and by women on a building that really serves women, a place that's for and by women as well. It's just a real sort of form serving function type of space. It's beautiful. It's, I always call it San Francisco's Sistine Chapel. And it's just a real jaw dropper. It's a monument. And so I think as murals should be. So it was completed in 94 and restored already. It was already restored, I believe it was maybe it was like 2016 or 17 that it was restored. And so if you haven't already, please go see the Women's Building. It's a really, really special place. And if you don't know, the Women's Building does everything from violence prevention and support of women to food distribution and resources for folks. So if you know anybody, if you yourself needs that or just kind of wants to go and check out a really amazing space, do go to the Women's Building.
What really strikes me about it is I love how they worked it into the architecture of the building, in just a really wonderful way with these arched windows. I think that's really, really amazing that they did that.
Yeah, it really does take into account all of this, right? It's like it truly is a site-specific work, in that way. It fits here. It could fit nowhere else, right? And so it's a real masterpiece. I wish we can go into it and all the details of who all these people are, but there really are some really amazing figures in there.
Do you know if there's any kind of website that might like provide a key for like who is this? This woman looks like she's a physician.
I believe there is, and they have brochures. They have brochures there, but yeah, I think we can look that up.
Yeah, that was one of the great things about Pan American Unity was, they have the key to who the people are. Apparently, they've all passed away except for one guy who's shown as a child, and he's now like 88 years old. And apparently, Will Minez said that he would come to the mural every year on his birthday.
Oh wow!
So yeah, so that's cool. Now
wait, real quick before we move on. I feel Nikki's got a question.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Nikki has your hand up.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to make a comment. So it was wonderful and praiseworthy and beautiful. The women's building is, it did not come without controversy. And I think we need to speak just a little bit about that controversy, and that is that in the construction and the reconstruction of this building, we lost a very important iconic bar in San Francisco, which was the Dover Club. And that was a legal struggle between the Women's Building and the Dover Club for a couple of years. And the Dover Club was located in that corridor. As you notice in that part of the Mission, there's a lot of union halls. And that was a union bar where a lot of wheeling and dealing happened. A lot of historic contracts were probably negotiated and discussed there. And it was a well-established labor bar. And down the street is the Labor Temple at 2940 16th Street, that big brick building that used to be the Central Labor Council. It's still called the Labor Temple. And a lot of other unions are still kind of in that corridor. So to me, it makes me very sad that we suffered that loss when the Women's Building came about, which of course everybody think it's really super great. But for me as the labor person, that I wish we could have figured out a way to keep them both up and running. Anyhow, I just had to say that as a labor activist, that was a loss at that time. So
Well,
yeah, I think
thanks
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
wanted to comment out, we have one person, Marcia Klein in chat mentioned that she does walking tours of murals in San Jose. And there's over 250 murals there. So that sounds really exciting too.
San Jose is very proud.
Yeah, and I would imagine a lot of communities around California have these. Maybe, Josué, are you aware of some maybe in the Central Valley?
Yes, there are several groups active in the Central Valley and individuals as well. San Jose has an amazing tradition, some historical spaces, East Side San Jose and beyond. Samuel Rodriguez is one of my colleagues and contemporaries and an amazing artist himself. But historically, I'm sure there's so many more. Like I said, each town really does have its own flavor and unique sort of perspective on this practice. And that's the other thing now. It's like, we're talking about Diego Rivera, what he was doing, 80 years ago, right? But, and then what the 60s and 70s brought in the 80s here to spaces like the Mission and LA and San Diego and San Jose. But worldwide now, spaces are becoming hubs at this very moment. I think as far as, I mean, how many people participated in the Renaissance? How many like actual individuals? Was perhaps 200 to 300, let's just say 500 people participated in the Renaissance. I mean,
Yeah.
I think each town has about that in each neighborhood, right? I feel like the Mission has 500 artists. What I'm trying to say is this now modern mural movement, it might be one of the biggest art movements in our global art history. I mean, there's just so many people making work like this now, and so definitely shout outs to those who came before and those who are still doing it. Right, that's why I mentioned spaces like Pusita Eyes and people like Juana Alicia, Yolanda Lopez, and some of our Shiros and heroes. Michael Rios certainly.
Yeah, and we're going to get to him. Actually, we want to talk about a few of the muralists, but I really appreciate, Josué, that context that, that we're part of this movement around the world for these murals. But I would think in that San Francisco has got to be one of the, if not the leading city for that. What are your thoughts on, like, what is our place, you think, among all those cities that are doing this?
As I was growing up, one of the things that people were saying, and particularly in art school, it's like, oh, painting is dead. I don't know why people say silly art, especially art people love saying some of the silliest things like this. But I said, why? Because a bunch of, old men really said what they had to say. It's like, no, you don't get to say your say, and then when you're done, you hang up the phone, right? Or you hit mute on everybody else. It's like, no, look, there's people like Juana Alicia. There's a whole other generation of people with a whole new set of identity markers and identity politics that want to step in, right? So women and beyond, right? Queer folks, people of color, just people whose identity is just, an intersection of all these great interests. And so I think it's really empowering to see where people are taking painting and where they're going with it now. And so San Francisco, if not by sheer numbers and by quality, if only the content, it's our voice and our style, our flavor is unique. And I think each city has something really unique to offer. But San Francisco is definitely and always has been a real sort of front runner for public art. If not museum art, at the very least, we're really made our mark with the public art, and I think we're leading the way with a lot of the city policies and the way that we approach it here in San Francisco.
So it's a reminder to me, as someone who's a guide, that I should make sure, even on my tours that don't directly relate to this, to tell people that the mural arts should be an important part of any visit to San Francisco.
I think that's right.
Marcia, I think do you want to jump in and say something?
I was just going to add that, number one, amen, that yes, the Latin artists are the ones who seem to be owning this. And, there's evidence of mural art from 800 CE in Mexican archaeology. So it's funny that they say Diego Rivera or some of the others were moved by the murals they saw in Europe. But in fact, it exists in their own cultures long before. And then the other thing I was gonna add is that in San Jose, the Downtown Association has been created to foster and create the art between building owners, artist collectives, and such. But they stress that the building owner owns that art and can do anything with it once it's on the walls. And there's no sense that it's there for the community more than it is owned by the building owner. So far, everybody's doing the right thing, but we've had some lawsuits down here, outside of downtown, because people do not agree on what is more important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
thanks
that's
for that,
always
Marcia.
that's an ongoing conversation there. I think it really does come down to that contract. I think that's part of the activism that we really have to get artists really versed on, is how do you get something up and what does the contract look like for that? You know, I really want to give another shout out. You know, Brooke Oliver's been an amazing lawyer for the arts, that really has stood up for murals in the mission. She used to run uh, a um, a legal office out of Balmy called 50 Balmy Alley, and they really stood up for people that way. And she really sort of educated me on, you know, signing a contract and what does the Vera Kappa, you know, offer for us. I mean, go in. That's a whole workshop. That's a whole degree you can get. The legality of public art, and I think we really need to start to think about this and arrive at something
Wait,
that
do
is
you mind if-
equitable.
And Josue, when you go to touch up your piece in Balmy Alley, will you go back to the building owner? Do you have a relationship?
I will, only because I don't want to, you know, stir up any feathers and like have, you know, in the rare off chance, you know, event that a cop would show up and say, "Hey, listen, who are you?" Right? So I can't have just gone there without telling the owner. So I generally do tell the owners, "Hey, listen, I'm working, you know, in this case, I'm restoring. So just so you know."
I wonder if they would help support. I'm curious how present they are in this
I
process.
don't know. I haven't spoken to them in many years. I hope it's the same owner. You know, they could have sold it. I don't know anything about it. I'm gonna have to really follow up with that one. But yeah, I mean, building owners, they will vary between being absolute champions for your work and pay for you and feed you and take care of you and just kind of love you while you're there and protect you, and to being completely apathetic and not
Yes.
caring about it. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen people build basketball hoops over like just drill a basketball hoop right into a mural on Balmy, and I've had you know, store owners refuse to help me with even with the cost. I wanted to share the cost of putting a mural up on space, and refused and instead gave me a tip.
Wow.
So I think that there's a spectrum there of absolute champion for your murals and complete apathy. And so, you know, it's got to be in those moments. Really have to just remember why I'm doing this, and explain to my wife, that, you know, a big fish is going to come later on down the line or something, because there is this teetering of, you know, there's the fatty projects, and then there's the projects that you do just for love. There's, like, you know, some that support you monetarily and some that you just know needs to happen. And you do it because it just needs to happen, you know, because it's the right thing. And so, like I said, each mural kind of really is like a person. It has its own origin story, its own reason for being, and its own sort of story for why it was created. And so,
Josue, first of all, I wanted to say, like, you know, I hope our arts community is going to be really, you know, supportive and good partners in all this. Like, culturally, we need to demand that this heritage be respected. But let me talk about some of these artists that you know, you wanted us to talk about some of the mission muralists that you know, and we've already mentioned Juana Alicia, very important in the women's building mural.
yeah, Juana Alicia is just a titan. There's no really other way to put it. I think she's done just a handful of stuff, so really instrumental in the design of the women's building. She's done, geez, the blue one, I forget what it's called, but it's all about water. This one at Stanford. Oh, there's a water one.
Yeah.
I don't know the title of the water one. But again, goddesses. It was, this one was really, really important. This one, she replaced one of her previous murals with this one, Las Lechugueras, which was really strong in the farm workers statement. Juana Alicia originally is from Detroit, and so the Diego's Detroit mural was really, really something that was part of her formation. She came to California to work with Sister Chavez and the farm workers, so the politics are really strong with her. I know all this because this came directly from her mouth to me. She mentored me for a few years, and I co-taught her. I co-taught the class that she led at Berkeley City College, which was the only place at the time where you can get an associate's degree in public art. That program unfortunately dissolved after she left it. But I was going to help her with that, and I was going to help kind of carry on that legacy. So anyway, she's my mentor, and just a little bit of what I've learned from her. Technically, you can see she's got a very distinctive style, a very distinctive approach. This one also is at Stanford. This is a portrait of the South American musician and songstress Mercedes Sosa, who is a world within herself if you don't know her work. Her music is as political as it is absolutely heart-wrenching and moving. She really strikes that chord of aesthetic beauty with politics and lyricism that I mentioned earlier. So I think that's why Juana Alicia is really portraying her. There's a young student. This is also at Stanford. I think the model for this was Juana Alicia's daughter.
Oh yeah, I see the resemblance.
Yeah.
The water one does that relate maybe to the water crisis in Flint?
No, I believe it's water crisis. I believe it's somewhere in South America, but I think it's also global. So what I might do is what I used to also always tell my students at San Francisco State, we're gonna have to figure out the answer to that one and come back. That one's a moment where we can kind of learn about it, but it is water, water centric. I believe it's South America, but La Llorona is what this one's called. Sorry, I always have it at the tip of my tongue.
Well, I'll tell you, one of my takeaways from this is I think I need to do more shows about murals in San Francisco. Maybe we will get some of this background information and go in depth about some of these murals. How about that?
Yeah.
And then we've got this one.
Here, I'm gonna post a KQED thing. You guys can maybe keep some of these links later and revisit them.
Yeah, we'll save the chat.
Yeah.
And we have
I'll do one last little quick thing. In the chat, I'm also gonna put a second film. There's a movie called Las Muralistas, Our Walls, Our Stories, that the Museum of Modern Art did in celebration of the Field Day. So both of the YouTube link and the KQED link will take you to two different things that speak on this work.
Yeah, I did find muralistas. It's easy to get online, and I believe Juana Alicia is one of the people who speaks in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's beautifully shot.
Yeah.
So we'll continue. Why don't we talk about Michael Rios?
Sure.
We'll show some of his work. He's got a very distinctive style. Kind of you can really tell it's like the storytelling aspect of murals.
Yeah, I think Michael Rios, I believe him when he says this. He said, and he's a very humble person. And he said, before I did this mural, there was 0 murals. But we didn't really know of any murals in the mission. There was not a lot of murals. And I think historically, I'm just gonna let that comment sit. But I think it's a challenge to find stuff before that. So I think that shortly after, so this is one with Chuy Camposano, Michael Rios, and there's a third artist which I forget. Forgive me, it escapes my mind. But this piece is at the 23rd Street Bank of America. So we're lucky that this one really has preserved its color and its style. You can see it's very 70s.
Uh-huh.
It's very 70s and it's a really, really epic piece. So it's Chuy Campuzano, Michael Rios, and Luis Cortázar. And so, you know, this really to me harkens to the style and the colors of Siqueiro. It's Siqueiros. It's really a quintessential Chicano mural. Anyway,
Yeah.
this piece is really very political, and even in its title, it's called "Our Sweat and Our Blood Have Fallen on This Land to Make Other Men Rich." Is the name of this piece.
In that politics, really, that definitely connects to Rivera.
Right.
Maybe all the Mexican muralists, but Rivera is the one you always think of doing very political things. Here's another Michael Rios, I believe. So he was doing stuff a long time ago. He's one of the longest.
He's certainly a forerunner, yeah, and he's still around, which is really great. But you know, I think we forget that you know, in the many things that we have to be proud of, right, in the Bay Area, one of is really that sound and that style of the 70s. Right? We had Carlos Santana making work. We had Malo. We had War down in LA making all this really amazing music. And Santana and people like Calixto Robles, they hung out with these artists. They still do, right? Like Michael Rios did a lot of album covers for Carlos Santana. So did Calixto Robles and Michael Roman. And so they're part of this very similar spirit. And so even when you see, you know, Michael Rios's tribute to Santana, or you see Michael Rios's the Bart mural on the 24th Street Bart Plaza, you know, these figures carrying the train, bearing the weight of it. You know, it's beautiful, it's lyrical, it's very mission, and it's very brightly colored. You know, and so I think we're pretty lucky to still have Michael Rios around. And you know, he's got a very generous spirit. His art and the way the colors vibrate, you know, they're on the edge of, you know, musical sort of psychedelic experience. You know, it's really powerful, powerful stuff.
So is he the one who did that the Santana mural?
Yes, he did that, and he was assisted by Carlos Cookie Gonzalez. I believe that's the last name.
That's great. Love Santana. And then we'll talk about Daniel Galvez. Tell us about him.
Gonzalez. Yeah.
Gonzalez.
Daniel Galvez is one of the, I think, mural virtuosos in the mission because of what he's able to achieve. I mean, look at this photorealistic. I mean, if you're looking at this from the corner of your eye, you would just think that carnival's happening. You wouldn't be looking at a mural. But the way that the architecture is honored and heightened and lifted up, he's working with the architecture, right? It looks like a street festival that's happening right beside all these Victorians. And you don't really realize you're just looking at the side of a Victorian apartment. And so, yeah, his technique is impeccable. He's doing, you know, photorealism in a way and in a style that before it was cool. And he's really sort of honoring our spaces, right? You can see some of these real places you can recognize, right? Studio 24 there once was the home of Galeria de la Raza, you know, Discolandia that now, it was a record store that now is a restaurant. You know, the York Theater, which now was once the York Theater, is now Brava Theater for Women in the Arts. And the orange one, kind of right smack in the center, the sign that says restaurant, the Guadalajara de Noche, you know, was a seedy restaurant at some point, almost on par with like a speakeasy, but is now and has been for at least 15 years, is the home of Persida Eyes Mural Art Center. And so these spaces still hold their character, but they are different these days. And unfortunately, we just lost Galeria de la Raza. They got evicted from that space. But the point of it is you can pinpoint and see these spaces, and still sort of in the quality that Daniel does. And he's still a very active muralist. I spoke to him last week, as a matter of fact. He's just a very active artist. And so we're really lucky to still have folks of this generation
Well, the last
producing.
Mexican, I'm sorry, the last mission muralist I want to spotlight is you, Josue.
Thank
And
you.
we did a program with you in October, which maybe I'll refer people to. It's out on my YouTube channel, and I can include that in my email this Friday, a link to that. But that was a lot of fun. You know, I'd love to do more stuff with you. Here is one of your murals. And then I saw that you are doing this thing called Vitality Arts with the Fine Arts Museums. So tell us what's that, Vitality Arts?
Well, I was invited. You know, I've taught mural and art making at a variety of experiences, everything from toddlers with Precita eyes to high school, after school, and university. But I've never really taught, elders, and so I was invited via the D Young to collaborate with Unlock Senior Services and the D Young to create a course for seniors, and I did, and so it was a lot of fun. We did that last spring, and one of the things I haven't talked to you about, murals really is. I think we talked about this in the previous uh, adventure, but murals really is a communal experience, and I love to do it with people. And it really flies in the face of the myth that artists need to, be tormented and alone, in some studio space, in some dungeon making work. A lot of times when I'm painting, I'm out in the sun. I am listening to music. I'm eating good food, and I'm surrounded with friends and collaborators. And chief among those is my own mother. My mother went from being very suspect of me being a mural artist and a muralist for a living, and she went from wondering if that was the right thing for me to being curious about it to later being one of my first art students and to being kind of passionate about it. So my mom is an active artist and an active muralist, and so when I said, hey, listen, like, do you want to participate in this class, she jumped at the chance. And so I basically told the people at the DM that I had a request if I was going to teach this class, that if they would let me kind of bring on this an automatic enrollment, which is my mom. So she joined us in the course and was one of the students there. So anyway, all I would say is that it's like it really is something that I would vouch for. Yeah, people at any age give themselves the treat and the joy to treat yourself to an education and the thing that you really love, whether it's art or engineering or whatever it is you're curious about in the world. Like if you have a little bit of time now and you didn't when you were young, I think it's an important thing to do now. And so I think a lot of those students were of that experience, that they were curious and passionate about art, but never gave themselves this time or space to even mix colors or to keep a sketchbook or to learn about it. And so it was a really rewarding art experience to do that with others.
Great. Well, Josue, we really want to thank you for coming on the show again. Great having you. And I want to note, like, Nikki put some information about the Cesar Chavez Community Festival, April 13th. That sounds like a really great opportunity to engage with these murals, but really you can do it anytime because it's out there. And I think we should be doing more shows about that topic. So Josue, thank you so much. It's always great talking to you about this stuff.
Thank you,
It's
Rodney, and
so
thank you all.
informative, excuse me.
Oh,
Very
Paco?
informative, Rodney and Josu.
Thank you so
Josue.
much, Paco.
Yeah. And I did want to
Okay.
note that I got some great photographs from Chris Carlson, who is he does foundsf.com, and just want to show great appreciation to all the San Francisco muralists. You guys are a real treasure for our city and something that makes us all proud. So keep it up, Josue.
Thank you all. Thank you, Rodney, for having us. Thank you for designing this. This is really, really special, and for really inspiring me to come and join you all.
Great.
Y'all feel free to reach out if you need anything at all. God bless.
Yeah. To
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Nikki,
you, Rodney and Josu. It was my pleasure to see you both.
great. Nikki, you want to tell us more about Community
Oh,
Living Campaign?
Yeah, sure. Maybe turn my camera back on. so people can see who I am. So thank you everybody for coming. And Joshua, it's really funny. I was looking for an address while we were talking, and look what I found. Can you see it? Well, I gotta have my camera on. But anyhow, I found your business card. We have met before. I
Oh,
don't
wow.
know, I don't know where, but check this out. I got your business card right here.
That's
Maybe
so
at the
great.
MoMA or somewhere.
Were you
Yeah.
at Balmy this weekend?
No,
Oh, okay, then no.
But-
Boomer
really-
talk tonight at 6 o'clock with Richie.
Oh, yeah. So
Thank
Nikki, you want to tell us what's happening at 6 o'clock?
Yeah,
'Cause-
6 o'clock, we're gonna have our Richie with Boomer Music, Blues Greats Part 2. That's tonight. But I really want to emphasize the Cesar Chavez Festival on 24th Street. If you want to feel that vibe of the Mission, the way it was like in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s, come out to the Cesar Chavez Festival. It's not one of these big fancy where you're putting out a lot of bucks, you know, for a churro or something. It's a really nice homey type of an event. And you can see the murals all over that part of the Mission. You can go down Balmy Alley. The lowriders will be there. If you want to be part of the parade with your organization, feel free to contact. I put the information in the chat or get in touch with me. I took a group of seniors last year in their high 80s and 90s, the church women. They rode with the lowriders, and it's just a great, great day. It's a great feel of the way the Mission has always how it has felt to us the last 40 years or so. And you can enjoy the murals. So I want to thank you, Joshua, for just bringing that whole feeling to us, and yeah, and what it was like back in the day. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
we should wrap. So everyone stay safe. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'm going to have another artist who actually has a studio in the Mission, named Cecilia Lusven, and we're going to talk about some pretty exciting art that she does. In the meantime, everyone be safe.